Okay, so today we're going to read an article, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the words that you're going to come across in the article, and you're going to fill this out when you're done. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about it first so you know what you're looking for when we read the article. So one of the words that we're going to hear about is the word innovation. That's the introduction of new things or new methods, new ways of doing things. So some examples of innovation in a sentence is the light bulb was a great innovation for mankind. It was a great new thing. Another example would be Elon Musk created electric cars. He's the guy who created the company Tesla, if you ever heard of that. He is a leader in electric car innovation. Again, innovation. He's electric car, a new way of having electric cars. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the word ist. Some of you, when we were still in the classroom, we talked about words like ist or suffix. It's the ending of a word. Words that end with ist are, that ist at the end means that it's a person who does whatever the root word is. So when we see a word like pharmacist, the ist is the suffix and the pharma part is the root word. And so it means a person who works at a pharmacy or a person who sells medicine. A biologist is a person who studies biology. So we're going to see two words that have ist at the end of it, that have the suffix ist. And so one of those words is going to be a pianist. So I want you to, what do you think a pianist is? And then you're going to write your answer here. You're going to just highlight that and write what you think the answer is. And also, what do you think an organist is? And you're going to write your answer here. Both of those answers are going to start with it's a person who does what. When you read the article, it might be easier to figure out what those words mean if you're not sure yet. So we talked about that a bump in the road is a small problem. The article that we're going to read is about Louis Braille, and he was blind. So being blind, do you think that that would be a bump in the road? It wouldn't. It's not, because it's not a small problem. It's a big problem. So you wouldn't call something like being blind or any major health issues, you wouldn't call them a bump in the road. You might call a cold a bump in the road because that's something small. And then when we're done reading, I want you to answer these two questions. Does Louis Braille rise to the challenge and find work? His mom wanted him to not be a beggar, even though he was blind. So she wants him to be able to find work. So you're going to write the answer to number 1 there. And then, does Louis Braille rise to the challenge and make an easier way for blind people to read? I'm sorry that that's covered up a little bit. And you're going to write your answer there where number 2 is. Okay, so let's go to the article. Here it is. And I'm going to read it through with you, but I will also put the link to the article itself in the Google Classroom assignment, so you can also look back at the article if you want to. Have you ever noticed when you step into an elevator that next to the buttons showing the floor numbers, there's a small plate with a series of raised dots and bumps? Did you ever wonder what those bumps and dots mean and why they are there? When you run your fingers over those plates, you feel the ridges. It's bumpy. When blind people touch them, they read the floor numbers. In a grid of 6 bumps with 2 across and 3 down, a configuration of 2 raised bumps across the top and 1 down on the right side is the number 4. 1 dot on the top left side and 2 across the middle is the number 8. Who invented this elaborate setup of bumps and dots that comprise an entire alphabet and numerical system, that's a number system, that allows blind people to read with their fingers? Was it a distinguished scientist or a brilliant author or perhaps a famous artist? Actually, this system, which is called Braille, was created by a blind 12-year-old French boy and was named for him. Louis was not always blind. He became blind by accident. Louis Braille was born on January 4th, 1809, in a small country village near Paris called Coupvray. His father was a leather worker who made harnesses and other leather goods. One day, when he was just 3 years old, Louis was in his father's workshop. Like many young children, Louis enjoyed imitating his father. He was fiddling with an owl. That's a small tool with a round wooden handle and a sharp pointed metal tip that is used to punch holes in leather. While he was playing, the owl slipped and poked Louis in the eye. A doctor treated the wound as best he could and patched the eye. But the eye became infected, and the infection spread to the other eye. Within a short time, young Louis was totally blind in both eyes. In those days, many blind people became beggars or performers in sideshows. But Louis's parents refused to allow their son's disability to get in the way of his studies or his life. Louis attended school like his brothers and sisters, relying on his creativity, intelligence, and drive to overcome obstacles. To help him navigate the village, his father made him canes. The local priest taught him to use his other senses to learn: his hearing to distinguish the calls of different birds, and his sense of smell to identify different plants and flowers. Louis was one of the brightest students in his school. In 1819, at age 10, Louis earned a scholarship to attend the Royal Institute for Blind Youth in Paris, the first school in the world devoted to blind children. For Louis, going to the school meant leaving his family and the village he knew well, where he felt safe. But Louis and his family knew the school offered him the best opportunity to get an education and lead a successful life. There he excelled in studying history, math, science, grammar, but he proved especially gifted at music. Louis became an accomplished pianist. There's that word. He proved especially gifted at music. Louis became an accomplished pianist and organist. He even got paid as an organist, playing in a small church near the Institute. So see if you can figure out what those words mean. The students at the school learned most of their subjects by listening to lessons. But there were a few books that the school's founder, a man named Valentin Hay, had developed by printed, raised, or embossed letters. Reading that way was slow, and the books were large and heavy. But they were the only books available for blind people then. Louis Braille began to wonder, wasn't there a better way to allow blind people to read? So we can see Louis is already overcoming some challenges, right? He's rising to the challenge. He's blind, and his parents wanted more for him than to not have a good education. And so he rose to the challenge, and he became one of the best students at his school. He's rising to that challenge. One day, Louis learned about the work of a former French army captain named Charles Barbier. Captain Barbier had invented something called night writing, a code of 12 raised dots and dashes that allowed soldiers to communicate with one another at night without using lights that would alert the enemy to their location. The soldiers could feel the messages with their fingers and keep safe. The code turned out to be too complex for the soldiers, but it inspired Louis Braille. Louis simplified the system, reduced the series of dots from 12 to 6, and eliminated the dashes. By the time he was 20, Louis published his first alphabet for the blind, a system he continued to work on and perfect. So he took this other person's system, or that person's way of doing things, and he made it easier. so that it was easier for people to understand. And how did Louis create the dots he used for his revolutionary new system? He used an owl. The very tool that caused his blindness became the instrument that brought the opportunity for reading to Louis and generations of blind people to this day. The world was slow to accept Louis Braille's innovation. Indeed, during his lifetime, his method was not widely accepted. Louis Braille died at the young age of 43 from tuberculosis, a devastating respiratory disease. That's respiratory is in your lungs. He was buried in his home village of Coupvray. In time, Braille's method became accepted around the world. Braille alphabets were created in languages spanning the globe. Today, we find them not only on elevator plates, but also on computers and cell phones. And the name Louis Braille stands for innovation, courage, and determination. Have a great day. Oh, so just one more thing, I'm sorry. Go back and you're gonna answer the questions that are on that Google Sheets. And if you have any questions for me, if there was any part you didn't understand or any part you want me to explain, just let me know. Have a great day. Bye, guys.